Hello and good day to everyone attending SummerTeen 2015. In today's panel, Teen Services Toolbox, where we're going to be talking about hosting a con at your library and having a teen volunteer program. This is your moderator, Karen Jensen. I'm the Young Adult Services Coordinator at the Public Library of Mount Vernon in Knox County in Ohio. I'm also the creator and administrator of the Teen Librarian Toolbox, which is a School Library Journal Network blog. I will be spending the next hour with you and our panelists. We will try to save 10 minutes or so at the end of the webcast to take questions from our virtual audience. But before we begin, let me go through a few housekeeping items with you. Make sure your pop-up blockers are turned off. If you're experiencing technical problems, please use the red Q&A button on the audience console and the webcast tech team will get to you as soon as possible. If your screen becomes locked due to local network congestion, try using F5 to refresh the webcast console. If you are on a Mac, use Command R. The slide presentation is available for download in the Green Resources folder on the bottom menu dock. A certificate for continuing education credit is also available in the Resources folder and is labeled Certificate. Check for other resources there, and don't forget to visit our sponsors booth for more goodies and giveaways. This webcast will be archived and available for on-demand viewing in about 72 hours and will be accessible for the next 12 months. If you have any questions or comments for our panel, send those in at any time via the red Q&A box. We won't make it through all your questions today, so watch for a follow-up email in the next couple of weeks. You can also follow us on Twitter. You can find us at hashtag SLJ Teen Live. And now let's dig into our presentation. I'd like to introduce to you today's first speaker, Marissa Lieberman.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marissa Lieberman, and I'm a children's librarian at the East Orange Public Library in New Jersey. I'm so grateful to speak to all of you today about library conventions, a topic that I'm very passionate about. I'm going to share my experience in planning ToshoCon, discuss the importance of library conventions, and share some tips for planning your own. First, a little bit about myself. I've been an anime and manga fan since I was 12 years old. A big portion of my adolescence was spent obsessing over my favorite series, such as Dragon Ball Z, which the kids and teens still love, reading and writing fan fiction, and attending an occasional convention. I graduated with my master's in library science in 2011 from Queens College in New York, and my thesis was focused on anime programming and conventions. I'm fortunate to be able to integrate this passion in my career. At my first library job, the Rockville Center Public Library in New York, I was given the opportunity to start a teen anime club, and it was with those amazing teens that I planned the first library anime convention in Nassau County, which ran annually from 2010 to 2012 before I relocated to New Jersey. After moving to my current job, I immediately started a Tween anime club for grades 4th through 7th. When I felt confident in knowing my community, my library, and my kids, I began thinking about reviving ToshoCon. I was fortunate enough to have full support from my administration from the very beginning and to work with a committee of librarians and library staff who brought new perspectives. I really believe that for an event of this magnitude to be successful and to be beneficial to the library as a whole, it's important to try and get all departments involved or at least in the loop about the event. This is a photo of our flyer that was created by one of my coworkers for this past ToshoCon. The character in the middle is an original mascot designed by one of our teens. I always love to do an original mascot contest to kick up early buzz and create good press about the convention. It's also a great opportunity for children and teens in your community to test out their drawing skills. This character, named Mamie Tomoko, was drawn by an 11th grader named Cache. Before she won our mascot contest, we didn't know who she was. She didn't come to the library, and since then, she's been a regular patron. This has some of the special guests that we had at our event as well, which I'll talk more about later. Over a year after we began planning ToshoCon, 400 people of diverse ages and backgrounds, united by their love of comics, anime, and all things geeky, gathered at our library on June 20th. When people first came in, we asked them to fill out a quick registration form in order to get some statistics, which I later used to make into a nice graphic for my report. We asked them questions such as what age group they fell into, where they were from, and how they heard about our event. Asking things like that will also help us for next year, such as knowing that most people heard about it through social media and that we had a lot of people over 18, so we know that we need to vamp up our adult programming. Everyone who came got a free bag with a free comic book. Comics were donated to us by Diamond Comic Distributors as well as a local comic book shop. We also gave them a badge with Mamie Tomoko featured on it, and the badge was strung on East Orange Public Library lanyard. So again, we were tying our convention to our library. They also got a program booklet with all of the names of our artists and vendors, the schedule for the day, thank you, and just some quick rules about our library and the event, which really helped. And everyone also got a raffle ticket. We gave out about 40 prizes. Prizes were either donated, bought with budget money, and I also did a little bit of cleaning in my own closet, and I asked some of my friends to do the same. Here's a photo of our program schedule. We tried to include a variety of panels, interactive and passive programming. When creating your schedule, it's important to consider the space of your library and what rooms would be good for what type of program. You also want to think about the target demographic for each event, whether it's children, teen, or adult, so that way when you're scheduling your programs, you're not having the audience compete for where they want to go. For me, it's always been a little bit of a challenge narrowing down the events and choosing what fandoms to include. But asking your patrons, asking your staff, and of course getting feedback after your event is always a good way to help that. And you can see a little bit how I organized it. I came up with cool names for our event, for our rooms as well, which adds to the uniqueness and professionalism of your event. Conventions act as the epicenter of geek culture. Conventions may be the point of entry for people new to a fandom or genre, and can also act as a place to get new information. Historically, fans have a lot of power in the science fiction and comic world, and conventions allow fans to come together with creators and industry professionals. And here's a picture of our badge. Some of them had staff. We also made ones for special guests, for artists and vendors, as well as our volunteers, which were mostly tweens, teens, and any family and friend member our staff could bring along with us. Conventions are also fun, of course, and bring people together, and it's the center of the fandom world. Most people are fans of something, whether it's a musical group, a sports team, or a book or TV series. Fans have their own subculture and interact with one another and showcase their passions in different ways and through different platforms, both online and in person. Fandom can include fan fiction, fan-created stories, fan art, and cosplaying or dressing up as a character. Shipping or fan-created romantic pairings of characters is also a big part of fandom, especially for teens, and that word in the bubble that says OTP stands for one true pairing. While fans may collide and argue over which character, series, or pairing is the best, conventions allow people who are passionate about different things to come together, an experience that you can't really get anywhere else. I've also heard multiple stories from people attending ToshoCon who did not know each other prior, who became friends after. That's something that's not uncommon in the fandom world. And just to explain the photo briefly, this is members of the North Jersey Anime and Manga Media Group. It's an 18-plus group. They really didn't know what to expect from our convention, and they told me after that they've been all over the country to large conventions, and they were so impressed with our event. So it just goes to show you that libraries really can make a stand and have a place in the convention world. Cosplay, from the words costume and play, is a big part of the convention experience. We had 2 cosplay programs at our library, including a fashion show, which we split into groups for kids, teens, and adults. We gave prizes to the winners and the runners-up, as well as something called a paper cosplay contest. In the vein of Project Runway, groups had a box of colored roll paper, duct tape, and old clothing. They had a time limit to create a cosplay on their chosen model, and the winning group members received a book on cosplay. And just to explain this photo, this is Luke Hahn. He was a former teen at my old library anime club at Rockville Center Public Library. He's now an adult, and he took over running the club after I left. He actually organized a road trip with some of the other former teens to come out to New Jersey to support me and to support ToshoCon. They did a group cosplay from an anime series called Yu Yu Hakusho. They were all handmade, and they won our adults cosplay contest. Now, we know why conventions are important, but you may be asking yourself, why should libraries invest time, money, and resources in hosting one? Well, large conventions are expensive and crowded. They're also becoming more mainstream, which is great, but that makes them harder for the public to get tickets. I know that's the case that we have with New York Comic Con, which is very close to us. I'm lucky I can get a professional pass, but for the general public, it's very difficult. Parents may not be interested in attending with their children, and depending on their location, it may be hard for teens to attend on their own. Libraries have a niche market by filling all of these gaps. Libraries can plan conventions that mimic larger ones, while at the same time catering to and working with the community. For example, our first major panel at ToshoCon this year was a group of 5 talented ladies from the Women in Comics Collective who spoke about diversity in comics. One of the panelists, also a well-known cosplayer, explained how rather than worrying about finding a character that matches her skin color or her body type, she puts a little bit of herself in those characters. One of the parents from the community, someone who I did not know, came over after and gave me a big hug and thanked me for inviting industry role models, and it gave her tween son the confidence to really try cosplaying. And this is a photo of Tashay, the winner of our mascot contest. We had her blow up her picture and recolor it in, and she's standing proudly in front of our large conference room. One of the most important, I think, and understated reasons for hosting a convention is providing opportunities for tweens and teens to help plan and run the convention, a unique experience. In preparation for this past ToshoCon, I appointed 2 of my dedicated Anime Club tweens as volunteer co-chairs. They were tasked to come up with activities that could be done at a table they would run and to quote-unquote hire other interested kids in helping out who were what we decided to call co-chairs of other projects, a term created by one of the kids. They came up with ideas like creating a poster for places to eat nearby that we could give out to attendees who were not from this area. Something as simple as giving 11 and 12-year-olds a job title, responsibility, and a chance to utilize their knowledge as something they were passionate about became a rewarding experience for everyone involved, and we're already brainstorming for next year. The photo on the right is the co-chair, he just got promoted, of our tween teen volunteer group, and the other picture is one of our tweens who's an amazing artist, and she's standing with Michelle Knotts. You may know her as the voice of Jessie from Team Rocket from Pokemon, one of our special guests. This is a photo of the ToshoCon committee. We are all dressed up and standing proudly in the East Orange Room. Library staff and administration will not get excited about your event unless you lead the way. Provide information about what comics, anime, and manga are. A lot of libraries are doing conventions now. Send them to their websites, their Facebook pages. Direct them to resources on the topic and provide staff training if necessary. Showcase how your program can tie into the collection and promote literacy and multiculturalism. Conventions are large events and allow you to show off your library to the community and beyond. It's a great PR opportunity and a great excuse to collaborate with local vendors and partner with places in your community. We partnered with our local arts council, who inducted Kashay, the winner of our mascot contest, as their first honorary teen member. We also formed a relationship with our parking authority, who gave us free parking for our event, which was a really big deal. No matter the size of your event or your budget, a library convention is just another way to connect your patrons to their informational and recreational needs, an aspect of almost all library mission statements, and that was actually quoted in part from my own mission statement. When planning my programs, the individual programs for your convention, especially the first time that I did it at my library, I always take into consideration where in the library those programs can take place, thinking about technology, what staff we will need, and what, if any, extra money we'll do to add to that program. I was very fortunate when I proposed the idea of doing ToshoCon at East Orange that I was given a very healthy budget. And to be honest, when I had done it at my previous library, I didn't have as large budget, and it turned out to be such an amazing event that I had to stop and think, how can I use this money? When I had done it In New York, a lot of the programs are planned and run by the teens, which, as I had said before, is such a unique experience. And their panels such as a What Grinds My Gears, where they talked about what bugs them in fandom, was such a successful event that I really had to stop and think. Normally, a lot of our money goes to special guests and industry performers. Cutting down costs, you can look into people who are local, and I found that people are really willing to work with libraries and their budgets, and they want to. We also this year provided food for them as well as our artists, which I would definitely do again. Details such as signage and clever room signs can really add to the uniqueness of your event as well. We received such positive feedback from our patrons, as well as people who just came for ToshoCon, our administration, and even our board president, who promised on our Facebook page that ToshoCon would be even bigger than next year. We had a meeting soon after to discuss minor issues that would need tweaking for next year and shared any feedback that we had gotten from attendees. We're about to have our first ToshoCon 2016 planning meeting, and I plan to meet with my tweens soon after that. Conventions may be a lot of work, but no matter the size of your event, they are such a rewarding experience that will be beneficial to not only the people who attend and enjoy themselves, but for your library as well. There's room for your con. I remember reading on a Facebook page that people were worried that there were larger cons nearby. They weren't sure if people would attend theirs. I've had people tell me they would attend a convention every day if they could, and library conventions are also free. It would be wonderful to see every library have one at some point in the future. If anyone ever wants to brainstorm or share ideas with me about your convention with me, please feel free to email anytime. I'm very passionate about this. And you can also visit my website where I post more anime programming ideas. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Marissa. I just have a question for you. So do you pretty much, as soon as you're done, start planning for the next year? Would you say that it takes like a good solid year of programming? Like what type of a timeline do you have for programming each year?
For me, I allow about a year. I had proposed this to my administration for the first time over a year in advance. I have friends who've done successful library conventions planning it within 3 to 6 months, so it really depends on your library, your experience, and things like that. But for me, I get so excited. The kids are excited. I like to take about a year. Some of the special guests, depending on how famous they are, they do book their schedules very early. So that's important to keep in mind as well. And also in terms of the date, trying not to conflict with any major convention is important as well.
Okay, thank you so very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. We're going to go on to the next portion of our presentation, which is about starting and maintaining a teen volunteer group. And we're going to hear from Megan Emery and then Laura Gardner.
Hey everyone, so this is Megan Emery, and I'm going to teach you how to create and sustain a teen volunteer group, or give up now, you'll thank me later. So who am I? This is Megan Emery. I've been in public libraries since 2006, kind of all over the place, Vermont, Maine, and I'm currently in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I create programming for the Tween and Teen department of the public library and also for the fourth floor makerspace. The picture to the left there is me holding my new baby. I just had my first library programming book published, and I was really, really excited. Those were the first 5 copies ever to be released. And I am a very proud former awkward teen. And just in case you don't believe me, here is proof. Yes, that is me wearing a mullet, a sparkly cummerbund with matching necktie askew, and glittering suspenders. And yes, that is a proud look on my face. Slide, please. Let's try again. All right, so currently the Teen Volunteer Program and Tween Volunteer Program I'm managing at the Chattanooga Public Library has 121 teens and tweens ages 10 plus, and actually that's just bumped up to 131 since I even did these slides. Last year, the teens donated 2,813 hours, which is more than a 40-hour-a-week full-time employee. And the in-kind donation of a donation that size is, as you can tell, almost $65,000 by national standards. But it wasn't always like this. It sort of began because I didn't have enough time. My ambitions were greater than what I could achieve within my work week, and I wasn't willing to give up any of the ideas I was really excited about. On top of that, I was really into ownership. I really believe, as Marissa mentioned before, that if you let teams drive library action, it gets them and their friends through the door. And finally, in 2006, tabs and tags, teen advisory boards or teen advisory groups, if you don't know the acronym, were a super hot issue. But there were troubles. So like any good idea that you just sort of launch right into, there were three main things that went wrong with it. The first was me. I was trying to make my life easier by involving teens to get some of the work done at my library. And it's a really common misperception, I think, that volunteers will make less work for you. Totally not the case. They don't create more work, but it's just the kind of work that you do changes. And the second thing was that you should get your teams to blah, blah, blah. I definitely wind up, every library I've been in, you wind up with people from the outside who come up with these ideas, like you should get your teams to set up the Friends book sale and break it down. No, don't let them handle the money. You should get your teams to, create some art pieces for our walls. You should get some teams to create shirts for this upcoming fundraiser. And it's a huge mistake because anytime people are creating work for your teams to do that they haven't had a voice in, they're just going to feel like labor and eventually they'll leave you. And the third problem that I created for myself was structure. I was sort of trying to decide, this is when this project should happen. It should be on Saturday afternoons. They'll love that. They can come and hang out on the weekends. But really not paying attention to their schedules was a huge mistake. And in addition, I was splitting up groups of friends, trying to maximize their potential for the project, not the potential for them to grow as volunteers. So I gave up. I gave up control. I decided to ditch the idea of the schedules I was creating and be more flexible. I started talking to the teams about when is it you can come in? What works for you? Do you want to volunteer with friends? Do you want to volunteer with 3 friends? We can make that work. I started delivering their ideas as well as the ideas that I was having. So I involved them in the things I was already doing, getting their input for larger events and then making it a reality, but also giving them the opportunity to lead programs and teaching them how to design that. Less talking, more listening. The picture that you see here of legs against the wall is an impromptu yoga break that we took during a program recently because one of the teams was like, I can't focus, I need to do yoga. And so we did it. And luckily, they're willing to talk, and they have great ideas. So what we have started doing in Chattanooga is we host quarterly focus groups to ask, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? What do we need to change? What should we add more of? And this is from a focus group in April. And you can see that no librarians are in the picture. We ask them questions. We ask them to be honest. And then we walk away. Let them answer. And some of the great ideas that have come from our kids include a Pokemon club that's entirely teen-led, a yarn bombing club that's entirely teen-led, and one of our personal favorites, once a month we have a screen printing class, and the teens taught us how to do it, but we're really their backups. But, again, revision. So with more teens comes more problems, and it's everything. It's communication, scheduling the time for high-quality interviews so you make sure that you're putting the teens in the place that they want to be in. It's crafting experiences based around those interests. It's investing the time in explaining how to do a job well, and it's also hanging out with them. A lot of our kids are looking for that experience of not just coming and getting work done for school, but being a part of a group. It's providing the right kind of experiences and the opportunity to jump from just doing something to doing it well. And then, as Marissa mentioned, also offering promotions. And then there's just teen stuff, couples and their inevitable breakups, and sort of remembering what it's like to be a teen again. But with those problems come opportunities. And so the communication problems that came, I was able to give up even more of my responsibilities and having to be the idea mill and let them take that on. I was able to give them a higher quality, more competitive experience because we do have 131 teams now. It's not that they're all in here every week, but it means that we demand a little bit more from our teams, and we're able to sort of cultivate and curate a group of teenagers whose skill sets blend really well with what we're creating. Also, those promotions allowed us to do things like train the trainer program, so now teens teach teens how to do the basic work. I mentioned the promotions already, and then we were also able to create 2 10-hour-a-week positions for 2 teen employees based off the excellent work that our teens were doing now. And so we have these 2 employees who were former teen volunteers. And you can do it as well. Super easy to set up a focus group. Ask wide open questions, the simple ones I mentioned before. What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? What do you want to say to the librarians? What's boring about us? What's great about us? But be prepared to act on their suggestions and act quickly. Finally, reward them. I don't care if sometimes it's as simple as bubble wrap. I'll just bust out bags and bags of bubble wrap, and every time they answer a question, I pass out bubble wrap and we make a lot of noise. And then starting a volunteer program is also easy. I love that Marissa mentioned that it takes her a year to do a con, because when I do my large events, I plan for a year as well, because having that kind of lead time means I'm able to prepare many, many different volunteer tasks that a single person could do or a group could do, and it doesn't matter if it's court-mandated service that team needs to finish up this week or tomorrow. I'm ready to go with opportunities. If I had to do it all over again, I would have given up control sooner, and I really would have given up the schedule sooner. I would have talked to them and involved them immediately. I would have implemented the Train the Trainer program from the very beginning. It saves so much time, and it gives them that ownership. And I would commit more time to communication. I think it's easy for all of us to get really wrapped up in that fever of getting work done. And at the end of the day, we sometimes forget that the hanging out is part of the qualitative and really special work that we do. And finally, just the fact that you're thinking about starting a teen volunteer program makes you a really powerful teen advocate. I want you to think about yourself as you're moving forward and don't create something unmanageable. The things that we do in Chattanooga or the things that Laura discusses at her library doesn't mean that those are the things that you should do. Talk to your teens and find out what they want and what's realistic for you. And then finally, here are a couple of helpful websites. I mentioned the $65,000 value of the program earlier, and that's the first website there. Some really helpful best practices if you've not dealt with being a volunteer manager before come from idealist.org. You can reach me for questions or comments as well. You can tweet at me, or you can dig through my blog and pillage whatever you need for your own programs. And now I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Laura.
Hi, I'm Laura Gardner. I am a middle school librarian in Dartmouth, Massachusetts, and I'm super excited to talk to you about my teen volunteer program. I'm going to talk about why I have one, how it works, and what exactly they do in my library. So I've been a school librarian for 10 years now, and I love it. I did actually do 2 years in a public library, which was awesome, but school libraries is really where my heart is, and middle school in particular. I just love the age level. So first of all, why a school volunteer program, student library volunteer program? I had to have it. It was really more out of desperation than anything else. Like many school librarians, I do not have any paid assistants, and I do teach 2 classes a day to 6th graders about library skills. So when students come in my library to check out books, if I don't have help at the desk, I can pause the class and pop over and check out books. But a lot of times, it just gets too crazy in there. We'll have one class on one side of the library doing research. We'll have students on computers. I'll be teaching my own class on the other side. There can be up to 60 kids in the library all doing various things, and I am the only adult in the room. And it's crazy every single day, but I wouldn't have it in any other way. So our circulation is just out of control, nuts for our student body, and it just goes up every single year. Our holds go up every single year. We have a great support system from our administration and teachers in our building for free reading, and we really have kind of a culture of reading at our school, which is all awesome. But it does mean that the library is a little bit crazy, and that's why I have a student library volunteer program. So we've got technology in the library. We do a little bit of bring your own device. We do green screen video programs. That green wall with the cinder blocks did eventually get the lines painted in. It doesn't really work well as a green screen without it. We actually have 4 green screens. We kind of got really into video technology this past year. So there's always a lot going on. So why student volunteers? Again, the first reason why was kind of I had to have it. There was just too much going on. No assistant at all, not even a part-time assistant. I have parent volunteers, but they're not as reliable. Things come up, and I've been having fewer volunteers as the years go on. It seems like more and more of my parents are working. But really the main reason why I have student volunteers, why I have so many, over 30 a year, and is because of the third reason on this list. It really increases student investment and engagement in the library. It means that I have over 30 students each year who love the library so much that they chose to be there and they chose to work for me and for their fellow students. And it means that they are in turn investing their fellow classmates in the library. It's a leadership opportunity. It allows me to develop really close relationships with students one-on-one, which is part of the reason for some of them why they sign up for it. And it means that I get advice on what to do in the library, what books to buy, what programs to run, and things like that on a daily basis in an informal setting where students can just kind of chat with me and tell me what they think. Finally, peer-to-peer book recommendations are just so powerful. When a kid comes to the desk and asks for a recommendation of what book to read next, I love it when my student volunteers just jump up and walk to the shelf with them and try to help them find a book. You know, not all of my student volunteers are huge readers, but the ones who are, that's what they live for. They live for the moment when a kid comes in and asks, what should I read next? And those recommendations are so much more powerful than the ones that I give. Students, especially in middle school, are so much more likely to trust each other. Peer-to-peer is the way, is really the best. So, again, my library is really busy. I allow kids to come in anytime with a pass. They can come in before school, during school, after school. Before school is usually an absolute mad rush of anywhere from 60 to 100 kids, depending on the day. After school, I usually have around 40, and during the day it just varies depending on the period and how many kids have academic support, how many students the teacher has let out of their room, things like that. I don't send students back unless they're being exceptionally noisy and we're having trouble kind of doing our lesson, but it's really an open door policy. I want the students to be there. So my student volunteer program, this is kind of how it works. It's before, during, and after school, depending on student schedules. My before school assistants actually arrive in the library before I do. There are two girls whose father teaches at the school, and they show up, they open the door, they turn on the lights, they turn on the front desk computer, they kind of push in chairs or do whatever, and then I walk in, and everything's just ready to go. It's so awesome. And they love that responsibility. A couple of their friends will pop in early with them. It's kind of their special time. I have two after-school assistants who come every single day and a couple others who are kind of floaters depending on their after-school activities. And then for the during-school assistants, since we're a school, it depends on their schedule. So I send the counselors a list of all the students who I have chosen for the following year, and then the counselors kind of plug them in. Some of the students don't end up getting to volunteer because their schedule, it just doesn't work. They're in orchestra and they need such and such extra math class. And it's such a bummer when that happens. And sometimes I even get extra students who didn't apply to be library assistants. I'll take anybody. As long as they want to be there and their grades stay above a C average, you are welcome to volunteer in my library. And so I try to make it fun. I try to find out student interests and capitalize them. If they're artistic, I save art projects for them. I have a couple of students who love to read shells. I find it incredibly relaxing. And so I let them do that. I do train students very carefully. It's a really worthwhile investment. I do let students train each other, and sometimes parent volunteers, they train students. So then the students have to pass the test with me and show that they can do all of the tasks I'm asking them to do. I have a list of routine tasks so that we can avoid downtime or too much off-task social time, at least the super distracting social time. But I'm okay with a little bit of social time. That's part of the point of it. So some stuff like cleaning the library, cleaning the shelves, straightening up, emptying the recycle bins, checking my mailbox in the office. Those are kind of routine tasks that they'll do. I check their grades 3 times a year with their teachers. It has happened that I've checked their grades and then their teachers have said, I know they don't have such and such C average. I'll tell you the days when they can't come and they need to come do academic support, but this is something that I know is really important. So sometimes there's wiggle room on some of that because for some of these students, this is what they want more than anything. They want this extra responsibility. They want to be in the library sitting behind the desk. It's like really the most important part of their whole week. I try to make really good friends with the guidance counselors because they make the schedule, and so I really check in with them over the summer, make sure everything's going fine with that. But that's been going really well. So I do require a student application, and I usually make about 100 photocopies of the application by the time the month of May is done, and they all disappear. I do require a short essay about why you want to be a library assistant, and I have some samples of those in a moment. 2 teacher recommendations are needed. Sometimes teachers will approach me and say, I wrote X on the application, but I really think that this student needs another year. And so I'll chat with a student and say, you just have a few things you need to work on, and then I really would love it if you apply again next year. It is really important that I get the right students in the library because it is during the school day, and it's a lot of responsibility. So why do students want to volunteer? Many reasons. Many of them want to volunteer just to be around books. Many of them want to really help people. Many are volunteering because they want to be with each other. I didn't put that on here, but it's a social thing for many of them. A sense of purpose because they like the library. All of these reasons are fine. The applications are some of my very favorite documents that I have. So here are some samples. A line from this one is, I could show younger kids and influence them to read. They might take my advice and end up reading even more than ever. Another student said, I want to be a part of something bigger than just sitting at a desk with papers upon papers, which of course says something about the rest of her school day. And finally, I personally love to read and would love to share my passion of reading with others. I'll be sure to take this opportunity by storm. That's a student who really wanted to be a student library volunteer and forgot to fill out the application in time for her 7th grade year, and she gave it to me on the very first day she could for her 8th grade year. It was awesome. And a whole bunch more awesome comments from applications. I love the application. It's so much fun to read. So things like, my happy, helpful attitude will make me the best person to be a student library volunteer. Hopefully you'll choose me for the job, and if you do, you won't regret it. Oh, and I like books. Did I mention that? And that from a student who checks out approximately, I think he checked out 150 books last year. William is he's a crazy reader. So I'm excited to have him as a library assistant this coming school year. So what do my student volunteers actually do? So they do actually do circulation. And again, this is out of desperation. There are times during the day when I have absolutely no one else who could sit at the desk, and I am teaching a class. I am working with a research class, and so they will check books in and out. They also process and deliver our holds. This student here, Cam, is shown with the stack of holds that came in on just one day. Our students, as I said, are just reading so much, and we're getting so many books delivered from other libraries to fulfill their demand. Our students also, my student volunteers also make posters for various things. Sometimes they'll come up with their own ideas, or I'll have something that needs to be made, and I'll ask them if they want to. I'll often give kids choices. I'll say, I need these 4 things done. Which one appeals the most to you? And students, of course, love choice and love their own being able to kind of decide for themselves what they're going to do. I have used students to delete books. They think this is great fun, blacking out the barcodes and getting rid of books in the library. I've used students to promote the book fair. So these 2 students walked around with stickers on their shirts all day that said, the book fair is coming up next week, don't forget. And I told them to also announce it in every single class that they went to. This is awesome. I often use kids to test out our technology. So whether it's a new app that we're trying, playing with the green screens, testing out the new website that I created, things like that. Let me know where the problems are. Let me know what I'm leaving out in this online tutorial I made. Try following these directions in this handout I have for my class next week. Let me know where the problems are. Also special projects. I have two teen volunteers who made a video with me for a Live Change Your Library student video contest, which we won, which is awesome. So we actually did that after school for a couple of weeks, and that was really fun. I also have a chalkboard in my library, and so the students love to be the one to erase the chalkboard and then write the new question on and watch it fill up. This was huge this year. I got rid of my reference collection, so that was the picture of students deleting old reference books, and instead put my graphic novels and manga on display in the center of the library. That's the picture on the right. And then I also switched up my biography section because a lot of times in school students are required to read a biography, and they want a sports biography, or they know they want a biography about a singer. And it was always so difficult for me to then say, okay, well, I know I have this singer and that singer, or let's try and use the catalog for that. So we've recatalogued and reorganized the biography section so that it's much easier to find books based on what the person did with their life. And this meant 2 hours for me of putting them in the sections on carts. And then the rest of it was done by student and parent volunteers, putting the colored labels on. The students did all of that. And then my parent volunteers recatalogued it all in the catalog. I taught them how to go into the catalog record and change it to, say, blue before B whoever. And that was huge. I mean, this took a week total. I had been thinking about it for a year, and one day I just decided to take the plunge, and I took, only 2 hours myself, and then the rest was done by volunteers. I've also labeled all the book series in my library. This helps a ton. It really reduces the number of questions students have for me. So a lot of times if I get new books in, I'll put them in stacks according to book 1, book 4, book 5, and my student or parent volunteers will put the labels on the sides. So some advice: start small. My first year, I chose my volunteers, and actually some of them were chosen for me by the guidance department, and that was just so I could kind of get my feet wet and figure out what I wanted out of my volunteer program. Plus, I hadn't had the chance to do the application process yet. Students hadn't had the chance to get to know me yet, so I didn't even know if anybody would apply. But now that I've been at my library for 6 years, students ask the first day when they see other students volunteering in the library, how can I do that? And I always say, look in May. In May, you can see the application and volunteer. But, I never turn away students who just show up in the library and say, what can I do? If they have time and they have a path to be there and they want to help, I will give them something to do. So I always am willing to say, can you clean this for me? Or can you go deliver this to a teacher? I'm really excited to just engage students in whatever way possible because the library belongs to them, and I want them to know that, and I want them to have ownership and to, really, as Megan said, to feel like it's theirs. So I also watch student volunteers really carefully for customer service skills and make gentle suggestions for improvement if it's needed. So if I see a student speaking with one of our student patrons, I may say something afterwards, make sure you say, have a nice day at the end, and I sometimes choose who's sitting on the desk based on that. Don't be afraid to fire a volunteer or give a probation for academic or other reasons. I've only ever fired a volunteer 2 times. There was one time a student volunteer was actually, instead of delivering holds, he was just dropping them around the school in random places, and other students were bringing them back to me saying, I just found this book sitting in the hallway. I don't know what's going on. So that obviously is not okay. And there was another similar sort of situation but it's very rare. I get the right students because of the application process, because I already know the students. I teach every single one of them in 6th grade, and then I see them a lot in 7th and 8th for research projects. So I already know the students who are applying, and I know kind of what I'm getting into. I include a question or 2 about my student volunteers in every annual survey, and I occasionally informally poll students to make sure that my student volunteers, and I can see this didn't get added here, but to make sure they're being respectful and kind to all of the patrons. Really important. Customer service is absolutely everything. So some perks of the job: name tags. You would not believe how far this goes. A couple of my students were they just wanted a name tag like I had. So I printed up their name tags. They got to decorate them. Easy. A big thank you party at the end of every year. We get Dunkin' Donuts and juice, and every other kid in the school is incredibly jealous for a morning. And then I also write letters of recommendation for all of my 8th grade assistants, and I personalize them and explain exactly why they're such amazing kids. And that really means a lot because they're about to go to high school and they're about to start applying for jobs, and they really can use that. And I have been used as a reference for multiple students trying to get jobs in the future. So thanks for listening and hanging out in my library for a minute. This is from the end of the year when we did our library at the beach. I'm really passionate about my student volunteer program. I think it's really rewarding for me. I learn a lot from the students. I get more from them probably than they get from me, but I do know that it's a safe place for them. They really enjoy it. And my 30-plus volunteers, they give over 1,000 hours a year collectively, and they really make so much possible in my library. So thanks for listening.
Okay, thank you very much to our panelists and to our audience. We do have a couple of questions that I want to try to get answered. For Marissa, I actually have several questions about budget. So if you could just take a moment to talk to us a little bit about your budget. And in addition to budget, somebody wanted to know about how much it costs usually to get your speakers. There was 5 or 6 questions about budget, so I thought if you could speak to that for us, please.
Sure. So when I had done it on New York, I had a very small budget that I worked with. Most people were volunteers. Some of the guests that I had gotten were between $100 and $250, and we had 2 of them. This year, we had a very healthy budget of about $5,000. I didn't actually use all of it. A lot of people were so willing to negotiate. Special guests, again, were anywhere from $100. The most we paid for a person was $550, and that was negotiated down from an even higher budget. They were willing to kind of alter what they had done for larger conventions to work with us. I usually put about half of the money that I get towards special guests. This year, I'm hoping to get somebody who we're probably going to pay in the $600 range. Looking for people who are in your area so you don't have to pay travel costs is a big benefit. And again, we had an artist that we paid $375. We had kind of a big range, and it depends again on where they are if you're paying for travel costs and things like that. I also put in money to get food for the special guests and artists. I had put $400 in for that. We'd gotten Panera for our special guests and pizza pies for the artist. I put in money for crafts, technology, prizes. There's a lot of little things that if you have the money, you can find ways to spend it. If you don't have the money, getting prizes donated and things like that is a great way to cut costs. Also, if you don't have money, to hire an outside artist, if you have a friend or coworker or family member who you know is a great artist and loves comic books, you can always work something out with them. So just to reiterate, I did have a healthy budget the past year. The majority of it was spent on special guests. And then I kind of make an Excel template and I work from there. I ask for the most, and then what I get from my administration, I go on from there.
All right. Thank you very much.
And if anyone wants to email me, I can send you my budget if you would like.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We have several questions about the teen volunteer program. Casey Shiley, I hope I'm saying that right, wants to know when you guys do train the trainer, what do you focus on?
Sure, yeah. So the Train the Trainer program starts out with the basics. So we do, somebody else I noticed asked about makerspaces. We also have a makerspace in our Tween and Teen department. So the kids learn how to use the 3D printer, how to talk to people about 3D printing, explain how it works. They are arcade culture monitors to make sure that, whatever the rules dictate for that day, is it a bunch of 8-year-old girls, they're going to take turns differently than a bunch of 18-year-old boys. So take a look at the culture, make sure that things are chill and mellow, or if they're not chill and mellow, that people aren't trying to bring that energy down and read in there or something. They'll also teach one another how to sign teens up for the summer reading game. They'll talk about the volunteer program with potentially interested teens, and they really do a lot of highlighting of our passive programs. So we have multiple stations, everything from spirographs to an Instagram photo booth, and they'll just sort of walk patrons through those stations and explain how the second floor works.
And this is Laura. In my school, we have a little bit of the train the trainer too, and it's mainly on how to use the circulation system, how to use the library catalog, which of course they learned in 6th grade with me, but I want to make sure they're at the expert level for it, and also how to help students print, because printing from Google Drive is one extra step, and we get so many papers printed that don't need to be. So I make sure that all of my student volunteers are really good at that. We also have a makerspace that's kind of in its fledgling stage. We definitely don't have a 3D printer, but how to kind of straighten up the makerspace, how to put things away, how to use some of the tech things that we do have, and stuff like that. So that's kind of what they're training. I do have some students who shelve books, but that is students have to go through a really extensive training process to get there, and I really only let probably 20% of my students shelve books at all, and of those they are pretty much only shelving the fiction. I think I only had 2 students last year that I let shelve the nonfiction. Mostly I'm only letting parent volunteers do that.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Sherry Ellison asks, what do you recommend for librarians and communities that have a lot of competition for teen involvement? How do you get teens involved in tags or volunteer programs?
That is an awesome question. So I say start with the volunteer program and provide the best, most unique possible volunteer opportunities in your area. If kids aren't showing up just because you're making them, go to the schools and promote them, especially if you have something really unique. When I was starting the volunteer program here in Chattanooga, I threw this massive Divergent release party for the midnight release of the movie, and so we partied up until 10 p.m. so kids could go to the early release that night. I went and highlighted that in a couple of schools. I really played to the interests of a couple of groups in particular. They told their friends, and it just sort of built from there. And the beauty is that even the kids who come to volunteer, say it's not their day, and they're just what they really want to do is hang out. That's cool. That's your goal, too, is to get teens in the library hanging out. So they'll bring their friends, and it just sort of snowballs.
And for me, Laura, it's, I have them as a captive audience in the school, which is awesome because they'd much rather be with me in the library volunteering than sitting in a classroom for academic support, being forced to, do extra homework or something, or even just sit and hang out. That's a lot of what academic support is if you don't actually have homework to work on. But when I was in the public library, for me it was all about the snacks. If I gave the best snacks, they showed up. So that's one thing. I know it's hard if you don't have a budget, but even just I made homemade cookies is an awesome snack, and I would often have things like that. And then same thing, going into the schools, talking up the programs you are going to offer, getting kids to come into the library to hang out, and then asking them, hey, what kind of stuff do you think we should do here? Do you want to help me do it?
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Liz Bowen asks, what about too many cooks in the kitchen, so to speak, when there isn't one volunteer coordinator but many throughout a library system? So how do you handle having multiple volunteer coordinators throughout a library system as opposed to one volunteer coordinator? I don't know if either one of you have ever been in that situation.
Yeah, I'm training a staff member right now to help me with the program because it exploded so quickly this particular summer. So I would say try and stick to having one master plan. I actually have a Google document where I detail all of the work that needs to be done for the volunteers, and then have meetings with your coworkers that are managing volunteers to discuss your goals, set goals for the week, talk about the big picture. And then I recommend co-training. I mentioned before the best practices. Reading through those and then just discussing them together can really get everybody on the same page.
Excellent, thank you. I'm going to guess this is Jillian. Jillian Streeter is asking about how you get buy-in from your administration for teen volunteer programs, especially in a public setting.
So this is Megan again, and I have a tendency to go back to the numbers all the time. So we count our volunteer program here at the library in the number of hours that are donated, but also in the number of participants week by week. We consider it a job training program, much as Laura mentioned. We translate the service that they're providing to their community in something we call one-sheeters, where we translate the service into bullet-pointed sentences that they can plug into college applications for anything, jobs, other volunteer positions, colleges, scholarships. We provide a reference service as well. But for example, so our fiscal year ended in June, and already in July, my volunteers have donated 887 hours for a total of $20,463. So in the first month of our fiscal year, they've already donated 25% of the entire, 33% of the entire service that they gave last year. So that is proof that the program is popular, it's growing, and it's worth the investment in. And you can use my numbers if you want.
Okay, thank you. And I have a question of my own. I was wondering, with working with teen volunteers, what do you do about anybody who might have special needs, somebody who maybe is on the spectrum? How do you navigate, and do you make sure to reach out to them and make special accommodations, and how do you navigate that whole situation?
So this is Laura. I have a student, I have a couple who fit that, and it's been awesome. Like, I've had, the student will fill out an application, the teacher will come see me and mention, like, I know that this student doesn't really fit the profile of your typical volunteer. I mean, many of my volunteers are very high-achieving students. And the teacher will say, but I think this will be a really great opportunity. And we are exactly on the same page. Like, I love having those students in the library. I love having them represented. I love having their perspective. There are challenges. A student I had this past year had a really difficult time with the customer service skills. And so we would work on it one-on-one. We would practice. We would role play. And I would give her the lines that I wanted her to say, to say, have a nice day, to smile, to look people in the eye. And we just went over it over and over again. Another thing that's really important, at least in a school, is pairing that student well, not pairing that student with other students who are not going to be sensitive to her needs and her situation, but pairing that student with someone who will be super understanding and will be helpful, and being able to even be transparent with that other student. Like, I know that this girl has some struggles with some social things, and I really want you to be a helper. And my students have completely risen to the occasion in those situations, and it's gone really well, and it's been a really great leadership opportunity and growth experience for students who needed it.
I agree. I'd say for me, it's all about the interview. We serve everyone just like the rest of everything we do in our libraries. So it's all about having that initial interview with the person to find out, who are you? What do you like? What don't you like? What are you comfortable with? And then if you are the kind of person that's working with other volunteer managers, it's important that you communicate those goals of the student or of the teen tween with your other volunteer managers, and then everybody is checking in with them, not constantly, but so that you're always able to get that qualitative feedback. Check in and say, hey, are you enjoying this? And my experience it sounds similar. It ranges. I've got kids who want to be shelvers because they're incredibly organization-driven. I have other kids who enjoy being the center of attention and want to make the announcements for me. And then one of my favorites is I had a couple of people, I've done this at a couple libraries, where we had multiple adults with special needs who worked with their aides and were drivers who hung posters within our community. And so they were able to, they had a list of contact people that they would get in touch with at each organization. They had the rules for, all right, when you go to this grocery store, you're going to drop them off with this person. If you go to this location, you're hanging it yourself. And then we would have scripts and expectations laid out for them too, so that they could get some on-the-job training and make contacts.
That is excellent. Thank you so much for answering that question for me. We are out of time. If we did not get to your question, we will try to email you an answer to your question as soon as possible. So be looking in your email for that. In addition, remember that this webcast will be archived in about 72 hours and will be available for on-demand viewing for the next 12 months. And I just want to thank our panelists for speaking with us, and thank you all for attending today. Please be sure to visit our sponsors and thank them for sharing their authors with us today. Thank you all very much.